resistance is a part of the process. It is a necessary part of the process.
And I so much appreciate you making time for me today, Megan. I really do.
Oh gosh, it is my pleasure. I'm so excited.
So I'm coming to you as a student, as the wise teacher.
Sure. Although what is student, what is teacher, because I just want to hear all about Hawaii too. I know that's not the purpose of this, but I can't wait. I can't wait to hear all about your trip.
Yeah, so that's been an interesting experience, both doing it and hearing from people afterwards. Interesting because not getting the reaction that I expected. So when I share photos and people say they see certain things, I'm like, what? Like that? No, that's not how I felt. What do you mean you see this or you see that? And so it's given me a lot to think about in terms of, if I share that as a show, or if I actually go out on the road and do this, people are not going to respond the way that I think they're. So that's like, wow.
Every single Facebook post I have ever made in my life, I think you're speaking of.
It's crazy, but I would expect you to be way more experienced than me. So you would probably say like, oh, I put these photos out, or I put a show out, or I'm going to be sharing these jokes or whatever it is that you're doing on the road. I can't even imagine what that feels like. Put it out there.
Well, possibly, but experience doesn't change being human, Like, I think that it's a very human thing I know, at least in my own experience. I can't speak for other humans, but I'm pretty sure that it's a very human thing to want to control stuff. And especially as an artist, I mean, I'm a creator. I'm a writer. And it's like the whole nice thing about a writer is you can control everything about your writing, and something I've come to realize is that I'm still really bad at this. Like when I watch TV shows or books, like as a kid, whenever I read books, I always used to skip ahead to the end. Once I knew kind of the basics of who the characters were, I would skip right ahead to the end. And then I would just read all the final chapters so I knew what was happening. And then I would go back and then I would reverse engineer in my brain. And this is partly writer's brain, but also partly control freak brain of how they got there. And I'm still so bad at that. I spoiler alert every TV show. As soon as I know who the characters are, I just deep dive in and I read all the way to season 7. And I'm like, do I want to see what happens to this character? So when it comes to putting stuff out there, it still bugs me when people don't react the way I want them to. It just doesn't surprise me that it bugs me anymore. I think that's just the difference. And if it surprises me or bugs me a lot, then it's just information of oh, I did that wanting to control thing again. Nah, shit.
Yeah, I love that. And so what we think is universal, or some sense of that will work for everybody, it just it doesn't. It's not the same experience for everybody. Yeah. So you're a performer. What drew you to that? How did you get to that place?
Oh, it's a great question, because how do you not live in that place? To me, I mean, I guess I wish I had a better answer, but I feel like the only answer is what else do you do? For me,
hide. If you're me, you don't do that.
But the thing is hiding is I wish I could hide. I just I've tried working believe me, Lordy, I have tried. Not only have I gotten fired from many jobs for just being but why are you just talking so much? To I don't need, not only, and to not even getting hired, and then I like to not even getting the friggin' interview, like the amount of resumes I put out there. It was just kind of like, this is over like the past 17 or 18 years. Maybe it's like a lemming constantly banging my head into the wall, but it's like, there's nothing else that my soul would have me do. There's just nothing else.
I'm processing. I'm trying to process, but I'm kind of having a moment because I can't even imagine how it could be easier to put yourself out there to be seen.
Carrie Fisher, and I believe somebody else actually has a quote like this that I heard, but the Carrie Fisher one is the one that I gravitated to, where people said to her, I don't know if you know about her solo show, Wishful Drinking. And
I've seen bits, yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. It's on Crave in Canada or HBO. I believe it's still on. But somebody, she just kind of goes into her alcoholism and the family stuff, and she just like really dives deep. And she had been told multiple times by many reporters when she was doing press for that, wow, you're so brave. You're so courageous for just going out there and putting it out there. And her answer to that, which I just relate to in every fiber of my being, is like, no, what's strong, what's brave, what's courageous is living through the thing. Making art about it is survival. So that's just been my experience with this, of like, not like I like, and that, all of that being said, like I do realize I'm in a privileged position, and I am really, really grateful for all of the work that I've had. And I totally understand that's not everybody's story and everybody has their own journey. But just for myself, like putting it out there for me is oxygen. I have to. In fact, a lot of my life lesson right now is I'm learning to like not talk about it so much and on a public platform. And that's actually like really hard for me. Like I had a boundary set with me in work the other day where she was like, in a very kind I statement kind of way, I'll say it was very loving and very kind, but it was basically, you need to stop talking about your trauma. It's triggering me and it's making me not be able to work well, and it's impacting the quality of our work. And I was like, oh, right. I guess that actually can be a disservice. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a flip side to that too, but.
So I'm going to invite you. Now, you don't have to talk about your trauma, but maybe share what you were just talking about. So what is it about when you reveal parts of yourself through your work?
Part of the reason that I'm drawn to this work was actually when I saw TJ Daw, who you've also had on your show and has also co-taught this course with me. And I just remember in 2012, I saw his solo show Medicine in Toronto at the Toronto Fringe. And I had a friggin' moment where I sat there and I saw this show where this beautiful, light, heart-centered, spiritual seeking person was speaking about their spiritual journey in an artistic setting, not like a TED Talk setting, like an artistic setting of an autobiographical story of a spiritual seeking moment that they'd had and the revelations they'd had, to a packed house of folks with a standing ovation. And, he had sold out that whole run, he barely marketed, he, did really well with that Fringe. And I just remember my jaw dropping and just going, you can do that? And so I identify as a golden retriever in Kimmy Schmidt's body. And I immediately like ran up to him after the show, like kind of like shoved some women out of the way and was just like, I need to know you. Tell me everything. And so like, in getting to know TJ, who was he was an expander for me in that moment of just like, this is something that's possible to do. And there's a market for this because, my entire life I'd been surrounded by people who were like, don't talk about your trauma. It makes me uncomfortable. And again, my spiritual lesson right now is there's a time and a place for that, but it's only after having gone the opposite route where like I've built an entire life based on communicating experience, strength, and hope of hard times and what I've done to go through it, and been given a gift of being able to make art for it. So to answer your question, to me, putting my art out on stage, sharing what is true for me, but also funny, and the perspective and the life lessons that I've learned as a seeker on this planet, to a hungry audience of folks who are hanging on every word and receiving what I have to say. It's honestly, in the wake of the pretty dark childhood I've had and the way my brain has formed as a, part of it, to me, it's the only reason worth living. It's the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, and gets me doing the things.
Can you share a bit about that show?
Yeah. Which one? Medicine or my solo shows? Or
your solo shows?
Yeah. So I have 2 solo shows that I've done. Well, 3, technically 3. One I like to call it is kind of like a prelude or something to the others, because it was my first one. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to throw words on a page.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. But you know what? Looking back, I thought that show was garbage. I thought that show was hot garbage. And I've recently revisited it because it was about 10 years that I wrote it ago. And it's really not that bad. It's actually quite good. I just had to have a lot of experience that would change my brain. That's a whole other topic for another day. So that show in 2012 was about how I got hit by a car just as I was about to graduate theater school and had my ankle shattered. And so basically I was going to be a famous actress on the West End. And, I had a great agent, and I was a dancer and a singer and all this stuff. And the injury was pretty awful, to the point where it has completely changed the trajectory of what I do. I will say, as a small tangent, just to finish that loop and that pin, is there's some extraordinary miracles happening right now where that dream of like being a Broadway West End performer is actually back in my hands again. And that is an extraordinary comment on the maker. But that's what that show was about that trajectory changing and putting me on the spiritual path, basically. And then my next 2 shows, which I collaborated on with TJ, were Not Enough, which is a solo show about a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat I had, which at the time is where I discovered I had what I called at the time anxiety, what I now see as PTSD flashback and body memory. And it was me just basically deepening into my spiritual awakening about this underlying soundtrack I've had in my whole life. And for that, I used a loop pedal, like a musical loop pedal. And I had the soundtrack, Not Enough, I'm Not Enough, I'm Not Enough, I'm Not Enough, I'm Not Enough. And so that was looping like the whole show. And then I did the scenes on top of that. And then the next show that I did after that was called Periscope, which was about the time that I took MDMA to fix my depression feelings of sadness at a party for one night. Spoiler alert, didn't go the way I wanted it to. I could save you an hour of time. But I really love that show. I think it's probably my favorite show that I've ever written and might ever write. It remains to be seen. It was such an easy download, and it was so important. And I think part of that is because that was such a dark period of my life. And that experience was deeply profound because yes, I took it, and yes, it didn't go well, but it also, I wouldn't have had it any other way because all right, this is going to sound like somebody who did a lot of drugs in their early 30s. And you would be right. But I met God. I don't know what else to say. I met God. We had a little conversation. I got a direct download on why I'm here and what I'm doing in this world and what the point of living is for me. And it's been deeply profound and it honestly changed my DNA, that experience. I don't recommend it going that deep because as like a flip of the side, I had like some psychosis. I had like mild psychosis, like temporary psychosis for like 2 weeks after. And it was really ungrounding and very frightening. And I've actually just felt like I was like, okay, I'm done with this drug. I've learned what I need from this drug. And now I've accessed in my brain what it's helped me access. And now, my job is to just kind of like steady on, take my learnings and stay on this path with a very, very sober brain. Because I've done the wild, unless, God would have me do different wild. And now I'm working on a show called Grease, 2! That is a show about how much I loved Grease and Grease 2.
I did listen to the podcast with Mike where you talked about how much you did love Grease and Grease 2 with Maxwell Caulfield. And I was,
oh my God,
even Grease 2. And I thought, I might have to hear a little bit about this because for me, I'm an old school Grease fan, but Grease 2 kind of left me cold, I would say. So I'd have to hear from you. So spectacular.
Absolutely. Well, and a fun fact is just a small callback to earlier at the beginning of the conversation of like wanting to control the conversation people have about. I would say I may revise my statement and just say that, well, I can't control what people are going to say in response. I think the flip side to that experience is giving me and that I'm learning is that and that I have learned and continue to build on is that maybe I can't control. They're not going to say what I want them to say, but that actually might be a gift because then it's like every show has this conversation topic that is going to appear to me within the first 25, I'll get some clarity on what the show brings up in people and what they want to talk about. And in that case, it can be a little experiment of this is my hypothesis, if we're going with the scientific method, this is my hypothesis of how I think it's going to go. But really, what is it? I think it's like step 4 when you get the test and you get the results and the data, then you're like, ugh.
It's so open-minded of you though, because I think back to the work that I do. I'm so open to, I do some stuff, people give me feedback. I don't take it personally because it's not mine. It's just work stuff. But your stuff is personal stuff. And as I'm starting to work more around sharing personal stuff, when people don't respond the way that I expect them to, I'm like,
yeah.
What?
Well, you know what I will say to that is yes. And everything that you've learned in your work life will carry over to this because what I've experienced is, the only way through is through and the only way out is through. And so for you to have that experiential knowledge of how that works, the personal does become a product with time. I will often make analogies that I have no business making, so please bear with me. But it's like this cell mitosis thing, like how cells. Yeah, am I using this correctly? Please tell me if I'm wrong.
Mitosis, the separation of cells, two cells.
Yeah,
so making children a little bit.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The child that goes off, it's
totally. That's the creative process. That's it. In a nutshell, is that the child starts with your DNA and then they grow, assuming biological child. Yes, we can have children of all, whatever. But the child starts, then they grow and then they eventually, or let's call it a fetus. The fetus starts and then they grow and then they become this separate entity. Thing. And then they grow and they become separate and then they become adults. The shows become their own thing. And that's why TJ and I always say 25 is the magic number. Once you've hit 25, your show's an adult. And it's just it can have its own conversations and I can be removed from it. So that's why we say at the beginning, especially if it's a personal show, I'm personally writing, I started writing a show last year that I don't actually know if I'm ever going to do for the public. I don't know. I need to write it because I'm a writer and that's what I do. And I need to perform it because I'm a performer. But I'm going to control the audience that watches the preview to that show if I ever preview it. I'll probably take a recording for archival just in case I change my mind, but I might not, you know? And that show is all about uncovering some really dark, repressed stuff that not everybody needs to know about. Certainly not right now. And that way I can actually control what people say and think to me, because I will actually say, I'm really tender about this. You know, of course, it's always a guess. You never know what people are going to say. But like when I invite trusted friends and family, chances are they're going to honor and respect me.
Even in this conversation, I don't know if that happens to you often, but so people who are not watching us, because it's only going to be audio.
Too bad, because I put makeup on for this.
You look fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. But you show a lot. And I find like you reveal a lot about yourself and how you're feeling. And I don't know if that's you as a performer, but I see so much emotion from you. Is that part of who you are, or is that part of you as a performer? Like you do show a lot, I think, about how you're feeling.
So do you mean like when I'm answering our questions right now?
I can see like the emotion up and down, and sometimes it's like really, and then I can see you kind of bring it down a bit, and then it comes out a lot. So, but which I appreciate, because I learn a lot about you when you do that.
Oh, thank you.
But I see that.
Considering I had to ask what you saw, I think it's just me as a person.
Just you, Megan. Nice to meet you. I'm learning a lot about you.
Yeah, no, when like my bless my coworker, bless her, and I'm so grateful that she drew that boundary with me, and I'm doing my best, but there are just some things that like, this is one of them. I will just feel, you know, I'm learning how to be an adult and how to like talk. I have the therapeutic tools of how to talk to myself. So when body memory comes up, I'm learning how to not be a child and how to be an adult in work environments, and how to be able to suss out the situation of like how much to reveal. Like I'm learning discernment around that and how much to share, but I'm still learning.
I appreciate it. I do. And actually, probably some people should unlearn some stuff that that they have learned, so that they can just be more themselves in that kind of everyday.
It definitely is freer, I gotta say. Like, I mean, but this is the thing. This is why I couldn't work a day job. They'd be like, you showed up in Lululemons. I was like, I felt fat. I didn't want to wear dress pants. We're like, well, we need you to brush your hair. I was like,
Not today.
Not today.
Not today.
I brushed my teeth. What more do you want?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you more explicitly, I guess, about vulnerability, because in a way we already are talking about that. But I feel that, well, I mean, you're going to answer this question. So when you put yourself out there in conversations or on stage, what does it mean for you to feel vulnerable?
Vulnerability. So my answer to this is going to be different, I think, than it would have been a year or so ago, just with the learnings that I've had and the, you know, the therapeutic growth that I've incurred. And I think there's the vulnerability of the damaged child that lives in my brain, that was shamed and hurt and abused by the people that should have protected her. And that damage, I don't want to call it toxic vulnerability. That was the word that came to mind. I'm not sure if that's totally accurate, because all vulnerability is sacred. But what I've learned in my therapeutic journey is that there are circles of intimacy. So it's like, as I was saying, of like doing this reading of the show, that I'm very aware that this, it's called Believe Me is the show. And it's all about coming to believe my body memories and what happened to me, even though it's, you know, wild. This is air quotes. They can't see me with my makeup on, but I'm doing wild with air quotes.
You look fabulous.
Thank you.
And we've got the air quotes.
So it's called Believe Me, of believing this wild memories that's come up. But, the whole show is about like, the more that I believe my body, no matter how wild these images are that come into my brain, my life and my psyche and my soul get better. They just get freer. And if I was making this up, if I was lying about it, I really subscribe to the belief that when we go against the laws of nature, our life gets harder. When we go with the laws of nature and the truth of what is real, not what adults have told us is real, because that's not always the truth. That's just something an adult told you because they don't want to look at their stuff and they don't want to go to jail for what they did to you. Your life gets harder. So all that to say that as I've learned that having a circle of intimacy with trusted people, it's like I read in a therapy book once, there's a therapeutic tool called share, check, share. So it's just like, it really is a scientific method of going around discovering who's safe to share what with, to find discernment. And the way to do that is through trial and error. So it's like, share a little bit, check how it's received. If there's like a blank wall or just like, nope, that's it. Like, my workmate, it's like, okay, that's the appropriate circle of intimacy to keep this person in. I like to call it emotional hygiene, of just like all that. So all that to say that due to the nature of what's happened to me and having a sensitive brain, it's not all nurture. There's some nature in there too. Like I just have an artist sensitive brain. What that has meant is that I have some really, really deep wounds that need to be heard and need to be shared and need to be vulnerable too. And so what I've learned is there are, instead of toxic vulnerability, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm going to say there are like layers of vulnerability. The same way there are circles of intimacy, there are layers of vulnerability of who to be vulnerable to what to. And the vulnerability that I share with my therapist and those in my close trusted circles is much, 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 much different than the vulnerability that I will share on stage. And that doesn't mean that I won't go into vulnerability on stage or on screen or whatever, or on a podcast. But what I've learned and continue to learn is the only way that I can function as an adult in this world is to build, I work a lot on like talking with my inner children with a therapist. So that's a tool that I really, really use, like self-parenting, really learning how to grow my parent. And so as I learn how to grow the parent that I never had as a child, that parent is the one who makes like that prefrontal cortex decision making is the one that makes the decision of what to be vulnerable about, instead of like the amygdala making the decision. Because if I'm making a decision from like about vulnerability from fear-based or shame-based or pain-based or whatever, and I'm doing it to the wrong person, or I'm doing it on a fringe show, let's just say we've all seen that show. And we know how that goes. Let's just say that. And bless them. I mean, that was my first show. Like, bless me. Like, we're all just doing our friggin' best, right? But the more that I do this and the more I walk on this path, the more I realize that the best way I can be of service to folks is by really getting clear about what I can be vulnerable about. And then going back to the beginning of our conversation, I can be vulnerable about it, but I also have enough inner resilience and inner self-parenting and talk to know that if it gets received poorly, it won't kill me, And that comes through experience and that comes through time. But, it'll still bug me. I'm an artist. I'm a human. But what I've learned is like when I get reviews on shows, I've discovered that for my self-care, because if I'm renewing a new show, I'm quite vulnerable. It's about something vulnerable, and I'm a vulnerable little special snowflake, So like I need to coddle myself. And so what I've learned for self-care is I have my director read my reviews for me. Like I have somebody look at a prism and I have them decide what's useful for me to read and what's not, because like, it's good to, be a promoter and take pull quotes. So when they look, they say, this review is great. because I get someone to read it who knows the show and knows what I'm trying to accomplish and has helped create it with me so that we have the shared vision. So that's what I do to protect myself. And then I go and put the pull quotes out and I read all the good ones and think, oh, aren't I great? And then when there are bad ones or critiquey ones, I'll also have them read it because there can be a lot of use in the critiquey ones. There can be. But I have to be in the right state of mind when I read it. And sometimes they may say something that I can't fix on the fly. And then what good is that? I'm just going to be in a shame spiral and not be of service with my show. So I don't know. That was a very open-ended answer. But to me, vulnerability is like I get to pick and choose which vulnerability I show when and what it's about and how precious it is to my psyche, or whether it's just something that I feel honored I can gift with doing in front of a room of special people.
That was really wonderful for you to share. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I feel in a way that I'm coming from the 180-degree opposite of you. So you're so open, and you're kind of like trying to figure out like, how much am I going to show? I'm going to manage, what I think is appropriate for this audience. And I'm coming from the opposite perspective, which is like, I have a probably, 360-degree wrapped around, taped, very safe, like nothing shows. Like I don't show anything. And so peeling that back, that's what's been interesting about sharing some of the photographs from Hawaii is I show these small pieces, right? Like these little bits. Like I see things in them and then I get feedback on those shots and it's not what I was feeling in that moment. And I just think like, well, I'm just going to be misunderstood. Like, what am I doing? Like I'm putting this stuff out there. I think it's obvious. It's not obvious, obviously, because nobody knows what I went through to get to this point. So that idea of putting yourself, which you do, like you've been doing your whole life, it sounds like, is just revealing yourself and putting yourself out there, which is amazing because we respond to that. Like even just how I'm responding to you today, like just I feel a lot of, I think, where you're coming from, and I'm coming from a different place of I don't do that. So when I put myself out there and it's not received in the way that I expected it to be received, I'm kind of like, oh no, what am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And, I think the grass is always greener. Like I've always, like, to me, I swear to God, I wish I could keep a lot of this in,
Repression 101. You want to sign up for my class?
Well,
I do that.
But it's funny you say the 180 because I tend to fall back on the word God because it's easy. It's simple. I do believe there's a higher power and a creator. Actually, I know there's a higher power and a creator. Sometimes I forget, but ultimately I just say the word God because it's easier. And in, let's say, this universe that we live in, there is a divine order. And when I was a kid, I read this story and it stuck with me. And it was basically like this kid asked I don't know, it was some story of like scientific lessons or something. And I don't know, I was waiting for my mom to come out of dance class and I was like super bored and the cat was being pet by someone else. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll read this book. And I don't know why it stuck out, but I feel like it's pertinent in this situation where there's this kid and he goes to his mom and he's like, Mom, why does hot chocolate become cooler when it sits out? And why does cold milk become warmer? And she said, well, honey, why don't you just put them out for 3 days and see what happens? So put the hot chocolate out, put his finger in, it was super hot. Put the cold milk out, puts his finger in, it's super cold. Waits for a day. comes back the next day. I mean, side note, I do not recommend leaving food safe products out for longer than 2 hours. So I hope he didn't put it in his mouth after. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he didn't eat it, but he put those fingers in. And then the story goes, "Oh, I get it," is what he said. And so that's just what I get, is just like, we all start from somewhere. And I feel like we're all like, it's funny you say 180, because it's like, what? Then we just meet in the middle. That's literally just meeting in the middle.
I like that a lot. Thank you.
And I think the fact is like, you have a scientific brain, right? Like you're a scientist. And so much of, for me, learning how to be an artist has been learning how to reclaim the mathematic part of my brain. Like I used to love math. Like comedy is sheer math. It's engineering. It literally is, you have a premise. And it's funny because you say all this stuff of like, you put stuff out there, people don't know the backstory, but it's the exact same for me. Like when we craft a story, we get to be the creators. We get to mimic the creator by being our own little creators and being like, okay, what is the information they need to know in order for this payoff to be great? And that's the gift of having, like, if you and I were to collaborate on something, we would be a dynamite team. It's like that with my writer, because you come from like viewing the world this way. I come from viewing it this way. And it's like, okay, let's put our heads together. And like, how do we make this happen? Which is why we need each other. No one's better or worse. That's why, we need each other.
Wait, when are you next on stage? I have to make sure that I flew to Hawaii. I will, if it's in Canada, forget it. I could like drive there.
Well, I mean, currently, so my day job right now, night job, is I'm playing Pam in a parody of The Office. It's a musical jukebox parody of The Office. It's playing in Edmonton until April 9th, and then it's in Winnipeg from May to July. Or it's like April 29th or something to July 2nd. And then I'm touring my Grease show, Grease 2, the Fringe show. I will be touring that at the Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Vancouver Fringes, and maybe Victoria. I threw my hat in for Victoria, so we'll see.
Amazing. I will be there. There's no doubt. Like I will come. Yeah, for sure.
Oh my gosh, meeting you in person would be the best.
That would be super, super cool. And I do have to ask now, because I saw, so your tattoo?
Yes, it's a very white girl tattoo. It says, "Expect miracles."
Nice.
Yeah. I got it after I went to Coachella, which is very on brand.
Yeah.
And I actually talk about it in Periscope. I talk a little bit about why I got this tattoo in Periscope. But I guess the Coles Notes is I'd been through a very dark time, a very dark depression. And then I made a lot of changes to my life and my brain. And a lot of miracles happened in a very, very short amount of time that I never believed possible.
It was actually one of the things that I didn't expect from having my picture taken. But among other things, I showed up and I was like, I don't have the right clothes. This is not feeling good. Like, no, this top is wrong. So poor guy, Jeremiah, I'm like, do you have a shirt I could wear? Like, it's like something, I need to blend in the background, something green, brown, something. Like, can I just wear something? And so he gave me the shirt and I pushed it up the sleeves when I was wearing shorts. And it was probably the first time I've seen myself photographed where I could see all of the tattoos that I have. And I was like, oh yeah, actually I like seeing that. Like I never see that. I don't see the tattoos on me, right? Like I'm never really looking at myself. So I see these photos and I was like, wow, I like what I've done over the last 15 years, like different things. Like I have a lot of, 4 and then one on my leg. And I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. I mean, like, not like I'm cool, but like, that's cool.
No, you are cool. And that's okay. We're going to talk about this separately when we talk about your show, but that's going in your show, my friend. That is a metaphor if I have ever heard one.
Well, so we're going to book our 30-minute session.
Yeah.
I would really appreciate that a lot. And I think that you have a way of seeing things that I appreciate. So thank you for that.
Well, and same. And I feel like I know that when the resistance gets really loud, so I say this to you and anybody else who's listening that needs to hear it, that probably me in the future, I'll listen back and be like, wow, that was really wise.
You go, Megan.
Did I say that?
Your smart self.
Who said that? Yeah. You know, like, you're exactly where you need to be. You're exactly where you need to be, and you're further along than you think. And that's just what I hear in all of this. Everything that you've experienced and done can and will be used for the greater good, both in your life, but particularly in your art.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And in the process of having these photographs taken, you start by sort of feeling where you are in response to your past. And that was very sad for me, which itself is sad. But so, I cried, whatever, it was a very emotional moment. And then where you are in response to your desires, which is your future, which I felt kind of like, oh, so, I have things that I'm looking forward to. And then you situate yourself again compared to your past and your desires. And I had a moment, and this is where I thought that, I know what photograph that was when he said that to me. And I was like, I am closer to the desires than I am to my past. And I felt like, oh, that feels really good. That felt really good.
Have you written any of this? Have you written any of these experiences yet?
I no.
That's your first writing prompt.
Right? Okay.
Everything and I would even suggest go back and listen to everything that you just said and write all of those out. Okay. And I believe Bossy Dramaturge one last time, which is you had a moment where you were like, and the emotion happened and I cried and whatever. And it was like this tiny little thing. And I would suggest that's a whole writing prompt in itself. Like that. Oh. That is the crux. That moment of surrender is crucial to everything. It's not something that we just want to gloss over it because we're told emotions suck, but they lied when they told us that, because emotions are the key and they're everything. So, or they're information. They're just as much information as GPS is on a roadmap.
Okay. So thank you for that. And I will do that. I will go back, and if ever I doubt, I can look at those photographs, at least for now, and just say there it is on a page for me, not for everybody, because they don't see what I see, but I see it. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. So thank you for that.
Same. My pleasure, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.